Greetings and welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Morton. You know, most of the time on Cancer Interviews, we hear from people who are survivors of cancer. We hear about their cancer journey, but sometimes we switch things up and bring on somebody who can provide some timely, much needed information about a person's cancer journey. This is one of those times. Our guest is Sallie McAdoo. She's the medical director of the Kidney Cancer Association. Sallie, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Sallie, we want to start off and first off get to know a little bit more about you. If you would share with us some of your professional background and the chain of events that led to you becoming involved with Kidney Cancer Association.
Absolutely. I'm actually trained as a genetic counselor. And so I would talk to people about, rare disease and risks for that, particularly in the reproductive space. I made a big change over to the cancer space probably about 5 years or so ago, working in thyroid cancer specifically at a laboratory. So I went from seeing patients to helping tests be developed for patients in the cancer field. And I just really miss being able to connect with patients and sort of help with that education. And when I found out about the Kidney Cancer Association and the opening that they had, I thought it would be a great fit to get back to helping patients and bridge sort of my medical side with the patient side in terms of bringing information and resources to patients.
Now, so every cancer has its own idiosyncrasies. They affect different parts of the body, or that some metastasize quicker than others. What is unique to kidney cancer vis-a-vis other cancers?
Oh, I think there's a couple different things. I think we don't have as much of a clear genetic picture around kidney cancer as we do with things like breast cancer or colon or lung cancer. And we're still trying to figure out why that is. There's not as many inherited conditions that cause it or known mutations that really make those tumors thrive. I think the other part is it's highly linked to metabolism. We hear a lot about wanting to eat well and try and prevent the risk for other cancers. Common sense. But with kidney cancer, it's even more crucial. That diet and the metabolism really affect the growth of the kidney and the tumors that are there.
From time to time, we'll hear about person A who donates a kidney to person B. In other words, we can function with one kidney, even though we're blessed with two. How does that affect the overall equation with kidney cancer and how we address it?
One of the concerns, although yes, you definitely function with only one kidney. It's not necessarily the easiest road, but it's definitely possible. Kidney cancer tends to affect older people. And so therefore, if you've given a kidney to someone at the age of 30 or 40 and you develop kidney cancer in your 60s, then that extra kidney that would have been there would have been more crucial to sort of have that backup that's there. I think the other big thing is it really changes. People are concerned with only one kidney. Does my diet even take more of a hit? Do I need to be more concerned about toxins and things that are in the environment? Most of the time it's no, but we don't really have a great way of predicting yet whether or not that second kidney is going to be important later on. And so that definitely plays a role if that diagnosis does pop up.
For certain types of cancer, healthcare professionals would say you should start getting checked at blankety blank age. Now that you tell us that most of the people who are affected by kidney cancer are older people, what would that age be when people should start having an awareness of the possibility of kidney cancer?
Well, although most people with kidney cancer are affected later on, there are definitely people affected in sort of the 30s and 40s, and even people sometimes 18 to 20 years old can actually have certain types of kidney cancer as well. I think one of the things that's unfortunate is there's not a great screening test. You're not necessarily looking for a lump in your breast, or you're looking for, blood in your stool. Blood in your urine is one of the signs of kidney cancer, but it may not be apparent to the naked eye that you see that small tinge of blood. There's no great ultrasound screening that's going to pick things up without a lot of false positives or false negatives. So there's really not right now a great age to say start doing screening. It's more about just paying attention to your body and that lower back pain, things feeling extra fatigue, and really looking into that a little more than just writing it off as old age.
Now, the bulk of our audience involves people that probably fall into one of two categories, namely those who have learned they might be diagnosed with kidney cancer and those who have been diagnosed. So chronologically, the candidate phase goes before the diagnosis phase. So I'll ask you first, for someone who has learned that kidney cancer is a real possibility, what advice do you have for them?
I think the first thing, which is easier said than done, is just breathe. Every time you hear the cancer word, it feels like that death sentence. You hear nothing else being said after that word is, even if it's just the possibility of that word, it definitely scares people. They're worried about lifespan, what's going on. There's a lot of information that's going to happen when you're first diagnosed. And so just taking a breather, bringing somebody with you that can hear about all the different information, have that second set of ears in case you do start to tune out because you're so concerned. Definitely realizing that we are living in 2021. There's a lot of options. So, compared to say 20 years ago, there's definitely a lot more things that can be done for the patient to really help with the journey, both from the cancer standpoint and just mentally in dealing with that diagnosis. So take a breather, bring a friend, bring a family member, and just take some time to think through things.
Now, how about the person who has been diagnosed? What advice do you have for them?
The biggest thing there is pretty similar. Make sure you take time to breathe. Kidney cancer is definitely something that people worry about recurrence. They change medications with toxicities. It's not necessarily a quick one and done diagnosis and treatment to get to a cure. So take that time, make sure you think through options, talk with your doctor about the option of clinical trials. You can do that both as a new patient or a recurring patient. And just making sure that you continue to ask questions. We always think the doctor knows best, but let them know what you're experiencing. Let them know what you want to change up and sort of take control of that treatment.
A term that has been used in other types of cancer. I myself am a prostate cancer survivor, and I became familiar with the term active surveillance, or at the time that I was diagnosed, it was called watchful waiting. But to what degree could active surveillance figure into the equation once one is diagnosed?
Sure, we're actually seeing this pop up more and more now that ultrasounds and other imaging are finding things on organs that we worry about could be cancer, and they turn out to be false positives. It's a growth or a blip that maybe is something else. And so in thyroid cancer, prostate cancer, and here, active surveillance is something that's getting to be more common. We do say it's a little different than watchful waiting now. Watchful waiting means we're going to wait till you have more symptoms or you're having a problem before we take action. Active surveillance are for those tumors that are pretty small. About 30 to 40% of them are likely to be benign or non-cancerous. So even when you see them on an ultrasound or a CT scan, you can just sort of watch it with periodic blood tests or periodic ultrasounds looking for growth or changes without needing any definitive treatment. Because sometimes those treatments, if it's medications, you might have toxicity that builds up, or having a surgery to remove your kidney when it might not even be a cancerous tumor. So you just watch it over time, knowing that that risk for cancer is lower, and you make sure you don't do any treatment that's going to put more harm to you as a patient.
It sounds, Sallie, like active surveillance, what separates it from watchful waiting is that active surveillance is a bit more proactive, but I would think that it would take, for lack of a better choice of words, two to tango here. In other words, the person at the healthcare end is doing the actual surveilling, but that surveilling can't be done if the patient doesn't come in and position themselves for surveilling as often as possible. Can that be a problem if that link in the chain is not a strong one, if the patient doesn't come in when he or she is supposed to?
Definitely. I think you want to make sure to come in. The reason that scans are set at, say, 6 months or 12 months apart is because from the studies, it shows that's how long sometimes that growth takes. And so making sure you do come in, even if your last scan was fine, you want to be able to catch it as soon as possible. On the other hand, we do have patients that are recommended for active surveillance that say, you know what? I can't sit on this for 6 months. I can't sit on it for 12 months. I'm going to be worrying about it every single day. I'm willing to take that consequence. And that's okay too. Sometimes that's going to hurt your health more, as worrying about it and stressing about it. And that quality of life is important, just to be able to know one way or the other and have that treatment done. So it's definitely a conversation and a dance, like you say, between the patient and the physician to find that happy place and make sure everyone's going to be compliant while getting the best care.
I want to circle back to a term that you briefly referenced and give you a chance to be not so brief in how you can extol its virtues. And that is the whole notion of clinical trials. How important can they be once one is diagnosed?
I think traditionally people think of clinical trials as I'm the guinea pig and it's research and it's experimental. It may not help me at all. That's true. That's what clinical trials are definitely testing things. But when it comes to cancer, clinical trials are part of your care. They're not a last resort. They're not a science experiment. They're looking at drugs saying, hey, we've seen some really good progress with this drug. We need to now compare to figure out exactly what the dosage may be or exactly how frequent it needs to be compared to what's standard and offered to patients. A lot of patients don't want to enroll in clinical trials because they think they're going to get a placebo. They say, well, I may get this great treatment and this new thing that they're testing out, or I may get nothing and then my cancer is going to get worse. And that's not the way cancer clinical trials work. You're not going to get a placebo. You're going to get the standard of care. So you're going to get what you would have gotten if you hadn't been in the clinical trial, if you're not given the new medication. And so clinical trials are a great way to get access to really the forefront of new drugs that are probably going to be changing things dramatically before anybody else, and really have that option of helping not only yourself, but future cancer patients by getting this drug to an approval standpoint.
In your experience, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you gauge the resistance that you see and hear about from patients when they're asked to take part in clinical trials?
I think once the patients are asked, it's actually not a huge resistance to it. I'd probably put it more around like maybe a 5. The majority of the problem is patients just aren't aware of them. And a lot of times if the doctor you're seeing isn't actively in part of that clinical trial, maybe it's one that's 100 miles away or 20 miles away or the one across the street, they don't bring it up because they don't know enough of the details. So unfortunately, sometimes it falls onto the patient to ask, are there other clinical trials I can participate in? How do I find out about some clinical trials that I may be able to participate in? So it's more about the knowledge that you need to ask sometimes instead of expecting the physician's always going to bring them up. But most people, depending on their circumstance, once it is suggested to them, are at least interested in finding out more so they can make those decisions.
So in a sense, is education a key component here? The more educated the patient becomes, perhaps the greater their desire to take part in and benefit from the clinical trials.
Yeah, I think one of the things in the United States is we always say, oh, the doctor knows best and they went to school and they know all of these things, but you're the only person who knows you. And so taking into account of, doing a little bit of your own research, asking questions, getting in touch with us at the Kidney Cancer Association for help if you need those resources. Clinical trials is something I've been doing for the last 20 years, whether it be from the company side or from the patient side and helping enroll them. And you never know. There's over 220 clinical trials right now in kidney cancer going on. And so there's tons out there, and it just depends on your treatment up to this point, what type of cancer you have, age groups, and so forth. There's bound to be something, that can be found to possibly help your treatment.
Let's go back to a word that you mentioned just a bit ago, because I think this is another part of the equation for somebody on a kidney cancer journey, and that's the caregiver. Could you just elaborate a bit on the importance of the caregiver in this equation and what they can do? If there's any sage advice you have for someone who might very soon becoming a kidney cancer caregiver, what advice can you give them?
I think caregivers are a very crucial part of the equation. I know myself, even outside of cancer, I go to medical visits. I always bring a second person because I'm always trying to remember what's been said, what's not. They remember something that, oh, I totally forgot to bring up. So having somebody with you on one for the information, like I mentioned before, is important. But the other side is just if you have those people in your life that you're interacting with, they have an idea to know what you go through, be able to give you that support. So it's emotional, it's informational, it's being able to say, hey, I can go answer this question for you. I can help you fill this out so you can focus on talking to the doctor. So I think the caregivers play a great role. I think the one thing that really hurts a caregiver is thinking 100% of what they're doing is needing to watch after the patient, because sometimes that emotional toll can be there for the caregiver as well. And they need to know what their limits are. They need to reach out to other caregivers to help sometimes deal with the stress and the emotional toll that being that caregiver and having that responsibility can take on them. And so making sure you get that caregiver gets their caregiving support as well.
Sallie, we're going to wrap up now, but The last question I ask you is one that I want you to take all the time you want to answer, and that is all about the Kidney Cancer Association. For somebody who may be diagnosed with a form of kidney cancer or has been diagnosed, what are the things that the Kidney Cancer Association can do for them?
Sure. Well, the Kidney Cancer Association has been around for over 30 years. We've done our best to try and create a bunch of resources that help explain things in a little more layman's terms, simple terms, break it up in little pieces so it's not all at once. We have a Just Diagnosed toolkit. So if you go to kidneycancer.org and click on the patient resources, you'll find this toolkit that walks you through clinical trials, talks about active surveillance, the different drug options, what questions to ask your doctor. It's a really great resource for when you're feeling overwhelmed with that brand new diagnosis. We also have various other links in there to our virtual patient symposium. Right now we have it once a year, but it's a place where over 200 patients come together to hear the newest and most exciting research that's out there, talk to other patients, caregivers as well. We have a support group once a month that meets the last Wednesday of every month. So we do have it this Wednesday still, even though with Thanksgiving, just to sit there and talk through things, realize, even if you just want to listen in, that some of the things you're going through, you're not going through it alone. And you may find a great little tidbit there that really helps you get through whatever you're dealing with at that moment. We also have other healthcare provider resources. We do give out research grants. We do have clinical trial information that we can help share with patients and help them sort through. Overall, I could talk for hours, so I'm not going to take you up on the talk as long as I want. But I think the bottom line is if you get to kidneycancer.org, you can call the phone number there, talk to our patient navigator with any questions that you have, no matter how small or how large, to really help you through that. Starting in January, we're also going to be working towards a patient assistance fund because we know cancer treatment isn't cheap. And even if you have great health insurance, it's those life expenses that can sometimes add up as well. So definitely go to the website, call our patient navigator with any question that you have. Let us know if there's something missing that we don't have, so that we can really make sure to get those resources so you don't have to search the internet for everything and you can find it in one place.
And again, that's kidney cancer, the words forming one word, kidneycancer.org.
Correct.
Is there any other web address information that people need to know, or is that the one place to go? And then there are many places that spring from kidneycancer.org.
Yeah, that's the one-stop shop. You click there, there's a place where you click that I'm a patient, and it gives you all the different things you can click on and find your way through that website to exactly the piece of information that you're looking for.
Fabulous. Sallie, thanks so much. Our guest has been Sallie McAdoo of Houston, Texas. She's the medical director of the Kidney Cancer Association. Sallie, lots of great information here. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Cancer Interviews. And we want to remind you that as you go through your cancer journey, you're not alone. There's plenty of support out there. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.